Hello and welcome to Football League World TV. This is the Under the Microscope show where we pinpoint one particular EFL fixture on a weekend. And this weekend, we're going to be touching on Huddersfield Town against Nottingham Forest. I am joined by George Harbey and Alfie Burns, both of whom will be there at the John Smiths Stadium, covering the games from different perspectives. George will be there from a Reds persuasion, and Alfie will be there covering the Terriers. How are we both getting on? George, how are you getting on all right?
Yeah, quiet afternoon, quiet morning, but yeah, I'm all good.
You've been a busy man today. Alfie, how are we?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, Sam. How are you getting on?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Right, let's get straight into the show. So first and foremost, if any Huddersfield and Nottingham Forest fans are watching this show, please do get in touch with us in the comments, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook or Twitter. We really do appreciate your comments and we'll get them up on the live show and we will debate them. But let's start off. It's been a bit of a contrasting season for both Huddersfield Town and Nottingham Forest this season. Forest this morning sacking Chris Hughton after a dreadful start to the Championship season. 6 defeats from their first 7 league games. As for Huddersfield Town, they currently sit in 6th position after a really, really strong start under Carlos Corberan, a cracking 3-0 win over Blackpool last time out. They've had a really, really strong start. So it's all set to be an interesting encounter in Yorkshire on the weekend. Let's start off the show from a Huddersfield Town perspective. Alfie, let's come to you on this. Now, let's look back to Huddersfield's last game. A cracking result against Blackpool. Blackpool coming off a 1-0 win over Fulham coming into that game. You know, there was a lot of optimism around the Tangerines, but Huddersfield really did a number on them, especially in that second half, that kind of 10, 15-minute period where they scored all 3 goals. Just how impressed were you with that result?
Yeah, I think it was a big result, especially having, gone to Stoke after the international break and lost. There was a lot of optimism around Huddersfield heading into the international break, given the 3 wins on the spin. So to lose at Stoke and then to bounce back at Blackpool with such an emphatic victory was a really good positive moment for Corberan. I think just how 2021 shaped for Huddersfield, it was important not to suffer back-to-back losses on the road and just sort of rediscover that feel good factor. And I think they managed to do that. And as you say, the 15-minute period in the second half's just sort of blown Blackpool away and got them 3 points.
Absolutely. I mean, Josh Koroma, a big part of Huddersfield Town this season, once again playing a big part for the Terriers against Blackpool. I mean, just how important do you think he is for the Terriers this season and in particular on Saturday against Forest?
Yeah, I sort of have an interesting thought with Koroma, really, just because of Sorba Thomas's form in the opening month of the season. I think it's sort of negated from the fact of how important Koroma actually is for Corberan. I think he's the most natural goal scorer that Huddersfield have in their squad, despite not always playing through the middle. He's most effective when he plays out wide on the left, and somebody like Fraser Campbell or Danny Ward through the middle. But Ward and Campbell don't quite carry the goal threat that Koroma does. So obviously he's very important to Corberan moving forward this season. I think if Huddersfield are going to be successful and push into that top 10, top 6 over the course of the entire season, then you're going to be looking at someone like Koroma to potentially score you 10, 15 goals. In terms of this weekend, obviously, Huddersfield are causing quite a few problems from a few different scenarios at the minute going forward. But if you were looking for somebody to break the deadlock with a moment of quality, like he did at Blackpool, then Koroma's probably going to be the man this weekend.
Yeah, it's worth noting it was a lovely finish from Koroma against Blackpool. A great strike from outside the box to score for the Terriers. Let's touch on a few more players at Huddersfield Town that could really make an impact this Saturday. Danielcenani on loan from Norwich City has enjoyed a really fruitful start to life at the Yorkshire club. He's been heavily involved in the early advances of this season. And of course, Sorba Thomas, a player that's really kind of broke through this season. He's been given a chance by Corben and is really shining. We've seen him in a wing-back role, didn't we, last time out against Blackpool? Just how important do you think them two will be, Alfie, for Huddersfield on Saturday? I mean, they strike me as 2 players that are very key to Carlos Corben and his side right now.
Yeah, as I alluded to a moment ago, I think that the likes of Thomas and people like Danielcenani as well, they're sort of lifting the pressure that was maybe coming on to Koroma earlier in the season, and particularly last season. I think Senani's a really intelligent player. He's played wide on the right a little bit for Huddersfield now, but he's obviously left-footed. He's not reliant on his pace. It's his movement. It's his ability to pick the ball up between the lines that's really impressive. And then somebody like Thomas, who Corberan's been quite, bold in really saying that he never thought that he'd be part of the starting 11 this season. Obviously involved in the squad, but not somebody that he'd be relying on to be, such a key player. So for him to play in a position that he's not familiar with at wing back as well and play as well as he has, it's really, really outstanding. And I think that the way that he gets forward from wing back, but also doesn't sort of shrink his defensive responsibilities, is, something to admire. And between those two and Coroma, then they've really given Huddersfield fans something to sort of look forward to going and watching.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of Sinani and Sorba Thomas, we've seen their set-piece deliveries become very, very effective for Huddersfield this season. And Matty Pearson seems to be getting on the end of most of it this season. He's currently the Terriers' top scorer with 3 goals. I mean, just how effective is that dynamic? The fact that they've got some really fantastic dead ball deliveries, and you've got someone like Matty Pearson who's got that presence in the box to put them away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with it being a right foot, left foot scenario as well, it's in swinging, out swinging from either side. And you know that 9 times out of 10, the ball's going to end up exactly where it's expected to go. And it's a really useful weapon to have. How many teams have we seen in the Championship over the years that are reliant on a tactic like that? And once you manage to nail it, it's very, very difficult to defend against, especially then when you've got people like Matty Pearson, causing absolute havoc in the penalty area. And, it's worth noting as well that it's not just Pearson. We've seen Naby Sarr score and Tom Lees in the cup against Everton from Sorba Thomas's delivery, and obviously Pearson scoring from Sinani's on Tuesday night at Blackpool. So it's a really useful weapon to have. And I think that, although we know what we're going to get from Huddersfield in that respect with the delivery and who are the danger men sort of in the penalty area, they've nailed it. And it's just really, really difficult for any side that they're coming up against to sort of get on top of that area.
Yeah, absolutely. For any Huddersfield Town fans watching, please do comment your thoughts on Sorba Thomas and Josh Coroma so far this season. What have you made of them two in that Terriers team, and just how important are they for Corberan this campaign? Let's touch on a few more things to do with Huddersfield. We saw last season that the Terriers did the double over Nottingham Forest. Pretty good stat for them coming into this clash on Saturday. I mean, Alfie, we'll come to you first. George, obviously, we'll touch on your perspective a little bit later on in this show. But can you see a repeat here? Can you see Huddersfield, utilising this momentum that they have and winning this game?
Yeah, I mean, whether we can sort of look at a repeat is maybe, something that we'd really be second guessing. It's going to be difficult to predict what we're going to get from Forest this weekend with Hughton leaving this morning. But I suppose, this Huddersfield side and the Forest side, it's not changed massively in terms of personnel. Corberan has obviously had 2 really good results against them, and that'll obviously work in Huddersfield's favour. And I think most importantly going into this weekend, we've got 2 sides that's confident. One's sky high and one's absolute rock bottom. And I think that it's very difficult to sort of look at it any other way that Huddersfield should be circling this game and thinking that they should be winning it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Forest do possess a lot of quality in that team. And again, that's something we'll talk about a little bit later on this show with George. Let's talk about a player that's really made an impact for Huddersfield Town, another Lowe knee. We've seen Levi Colwell really, really impress at the heart of defence. The young Chelsea centre-back. This does appear to be a breakthrough season for him. He is a consistent starter in that back line for Huddersfield. He's played the majority of games so far. Alfie, I mean, just how impressed have you been with him in there? And again, is he someone you see starting on Saturday against Forest?
Yeah, he looks a tremendous prospect. And I think it's crazy to think that Colwell hadn't even played any senior minutes before this season. And I think, it's just tremendous how he's come into the Huddersfield side who, they were the worst defensive record in the Championship last season. And obviously they've added Pearson to that as well as Lee Nichols in goal. But Colwell's come in and he's just looked really impressive. He's completely unflustered by what the Championships, some quite hard attackers to come up against have thrown at him. And he's just really, really good. I think in terms of starting against Forest, he will be a guaranteed starter. I think the only league game he's missed so far was at Stoke, and it came after international duty with one of England's youth teams, I think I'm right in saying. So Corberan's got full faith in him, and if everything's right in terms of injuries and there's nothing like that, I think he should be in the starting 11 at the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. This next question I've got for both of you is probably for both of you, actually. We'll touch on that now. Yeah, so George, if you want to unmute your microphone, that'd be great. This is for both of you. Obviously, this morning we saw the news that Chris Hughton's been sacked by Nottingham Forest, but it's fair to say Carlos Corberan's not really had it plain sailing at Huddersfield Town. It's not been a straightforward trajectory in terms of his time there. He's had some tough spells, some tough stints where results haven't gone their way. They struggled, and naturally, kind of the fan base starts to turn against the manager. But you know, the Terriers have stuck by him, and it looks like they are reaping the rewards, certainly in these early advances of the campaign. I guess, George, we'll start with you here. I mean, do you say Huddersfield are a bit of an example to Forest, given they've stuck by him, Carlos Corberan? They've stuck by, you know, Carlos Corberan has got a clear philosophy, and it's obviously taken time to embed that in that Terriers team. Do you think perhaps Huddersfield are a bit of an example, or do you think Forest is just a different kind of entity?
It's a good question. I think you can kind of look at it both ways. I mean, it's no secret that Forest have got through far too many managers in the last decade. I think it's now about the 14th manager they're looking for in the last 11 years. I think when Huddersfield obviously went with Corberan, they're obviously looking for a younger, more progressive coach who's there for not just the short term, for the long term as well. You know, I think their fans would have known they had to be patient with him. There was a lot of injuries last season that are well documented, so it was always going to be hard for him in his first season. I don't think many fans have been, you know, thinking he's going to, you know, blow them away and romp to the playoffs. I think it's different when Forest went with Chris Hughton. I think obviously they'd made a terrible start on the Sabi Lamucci, and after missing out on the playoffs the previous season, I think they were looking for more of a steady pair of hands. You know, someone who knows what he's doing. Obviously, Hughton's very experienced at this level, but in the end, that's experience has proved to mean nothing, really. So, I guess now with Forest looking at more of a long-term option, as we see in Steve Cooper, I suppose there's then scope with also a new CEO above him to really, you know, change the way of thinking. Now, I think the new regime nowadays, you know, are looking at changing the whole model. They're focusing on reducing the cost of the squad, the size of the squad, and, you know, bringing in younger players, because Forest recruitment and everything has been really short-termist in recent years. I think even the chairman admitted that. So, yes, you need to give a manager time. However, I don't think Chris Hughton was the man. You know, I don't think he has the same values or same way of thinking as Dane Murphy and the new recruitment team have got. So again, bringing in someone who we've seen today, like Steve Cooper, who is only 41, he works with younger players, building for a long-term project. I think he said to Dags earlier, you know, you've got to have a bit of pain before you gain. So Murphy said it's going to take 2 to 3 windows to fully embed this philosophy that they're talking about. So maybe then that's when you'll see Forest with a manager for once. Yeah,
I mean, Alfie, what's your perspective on this? Have you been? I mean, it's quite admirable to see a club stick with a manager through some tough times, because, you know, so often these days we see clubs be quite trigger happy when it comes to these sorts of things. But Huddersfield have stuck by Corberan, and as I said, you know, they are starting to look pretty impressive. I mean, what have you made of it?
Yeah, I sort of think that most clubs, probably Forest, you know, at the top of that list, would have got rid of Corberan the way that results sort of shaped earlier in 2021. You know, it wasn't a good outlook. Huddersfield were predictable. They were easy to beat. They conceded soft goals. But, you know, full credit to Phil Hodgkinson, who stuck by him, and you know, he's been very open with his thoughts on the club in other interviews quite recently. I've always sort of said, though, that if you sort of step back and don't look at the emotional side of it when it comes to Huddersfield Town, that Corberan's actually had a really rough ride since he's gone in there. I think, you know, George sort of alluded to it there earlier. He's had a lot of injuries, and when those injuries hit last season, the likes of Corben missing for large periods, and people like Harry Toffolo, you know, results did dip. But when he had a fully fit team to pick from, then the results were still there. And at the start of this season, we saw, you know, Huddersfield struck down with a number of COVID cases, the likes of Lewis O'Brien, Harry Toffolo. And all of a sudden, those players coming back has coincided with 4 wins in 5 in the Championship, and Huddersfield taking an early place in the top 6. And I don't think that that's, you know, a coincidence, really. I think that that's Corberan having his best side available, and players that are buying into his philosophy, and you know, really putting in some solid performances. So I think that Huddersfield's faith is slowly starting to be justified in Corberan. But I think that just as long as he keeps everybody fit, then he'll continue to keep impressing in the way that he is at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. For all Nottingham Forest fans and Huddersfield fans watching, we're going to touch on the score predictions later on in this show. So we want your score predictions for this Saturday's game at John Smith Stadium. So please do comment your score predictions for this clash on the weekend. Right, let's touch on this match from a Nottingham Forest perspective. So we've done a lot of talking today with regards to Chris Hughton and his sacking this morning. Stephen Reid's going to be in interim charge on Saturday for this clash. George, we'll come to you. I mean, what effect do you think this news will have on the Nottingham Forest players? Could it act as a bit of a kickstart for Forest on Saturday?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think I'll have very little effect. I mean, I've seen a lot of fans on social media today not really happy with the decision to stick with Reid. I think Andy Reid and Gary Brazil, Brazil's been, as has been the case for the last few years when Forest have sat managers, has been the chosen one in terms of interim managers. But I think with the academy going into category 1 and a lot of Premier League 2 games coming up, I think the thinking there was just to kind of leave them to under 23s whilst they're doing okay, and just put Reid in. It looks like it's going to be only one game. It looks like Steve Cooper looks to be the man who they want. The talk's been opened, and it looks as if that looks to be imminent. So I don't particularly think that, say if they brought in Cooper tomorrow and he was in charge on Saturday at Huddersfield, I think that would have no impact whatsoever. The same impact as what I think having Stephen Reid in there would do. You're seeing that, I know it's different, but the start of the season, when Russell Martin had a few days to work at Swansea and went to Blackburn, tried to change the way of thinking, that can kind of be quite detrimental. I know Hughton and Cooper's systems aren't as different as what Martin and Cooper's system was, but I just think that this weekend you might as well just kind of stick with Reid for the time being, let Cooper have a week to get to know the players without confusing them. Reid's obviously been there since the start of Hughton's tenure, knows the players well, but been unable to turn it around with Hughton or get them firing up the table. So I think I have little effect, and I just think that this weekend they kind of just got to play for the badge rather than play for anything else, play for themselves.
Yeah, let's touch on the formation and tactics for Forest heading into this one. Obviously, in the last couple of games, Forest have opted for a 4-4-1-1 formation. Lyle Taylor and Lewis Grabban starting up top in Forest's last 2 games. George, I mean, are you expecting many alterations? I suppose it's quite hard to say. We don't really know how Stephen Reid's going to play it. But, I mean, if you're the Forest boss, George, are you making a raft of changes, or are you making a couple of changes? I mean, let's kind of break it down. Let's start off with the goalkeeper. We saw even Horvath, didn't we, start against Middlesbrough? Obviously made that mistake for the second goal. Would you be recalling Bryce Samba straight into the team for this one, or is Horvath worthy of another start on Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's easy to say, he made that mistake and he should be banished from the club or whatever. But I think this weekend he should keep his place. I don't think, his confidence is already low, so I wouldn't lower it even more by dropping him at the first. I know it was an absolute clangery drop last night, but Bryce Samba was in poor form for the 6 games before that. Horvath really impressed in the Carabao Cup. I know he conceded 4 against Wolves, but made some decent saves and kept Wolves at bay that night. So no, I'd stick with him. I think apart from that mistake, he had a fairly good game, bit of a quiet game. Borough didn't really create too many chances apart from the end. But I think he's a good goalkeeper, and I think he's exactly why Bryce Samba has never really had competition at Forest since he joined the club. He had Jordan Smith and Muric, who ended up going back to Man City. So he needs competition. He needs a point needs to be proved, and I just think Horvath doesn't deserve to be written off after that one game. In terms of the formations, the 4-4-1-1, I think many fans thought it'd be a 4-4-2 with Taylor and Grabban up top, but Grabban's been used almost as a 10. Back end of last season, Hughton tried it, and I think he just basically put that down to Grabban being quite an intelligent footballer and linking up play between midfield and attack. I don't think it's worked too well, to be fair. I think Grabban his best position is in the 6-yard box poaching, and that's how he scored most of his goals with Forest. This weekend, I think you've got to put obviously Jed Spence in at right back, and going forward, I think Alex Myton needs to come back in. I just think he had so much pace on that left-hand side. He's a really dangerous player, and I don't know why he wasn't in the squad last night, to be fair. So they're the changes I'll be making kind of this weekend.
Absolutely. I mean, what have you made of Philip Zinkernagel? He seems to be one of the players that kind of has impressed somewhat in recent weeks, a player that has got quality to unlock defences, and he often likes a long shot, doesn't he? We see him shoot quite often from outside the box to try and score. Is he someone that you'd retain in that Forest 11 for Huddersfield on Saturday?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's been when Forest have played well. They haven't played too well this season, but when everyone's been having an okay game, he's been the one who stood out the most. He's looked to, I think he got something like 3 assists and 1 goal in his first 3 starts for the club. Gone off the boil in the last couple of weeks, but who hasn't really? A very versatile player, can play either out wide, on either flank, or last night he got put in the middle to try and create things. I think Hughton saw him as a real creative sparking midfielder who can, pick out a pass, obviously dangerous from long range distance, and he's fairly got a decent cross on him as well. So, a very good player. I think he will be key to Forest revival as they look to get up the table, and obviously his versatility means that if a new manager does come in, he could play in a number of different roles. The same as Brennan Johnson, really. Them two are the two creative sparks. I mean, Johnson creates something out of nothing. He's got a lot of pace, and I think he's really found a home for himself in that right wing. Last night, did well there at Lincoln last season. I just think that's his natural position, and I think them two are definitely certain to start this weekend.
Yeah, just brief. Finally, on the kind of 11 for Forest on Saturday, would you be sticking with the McKenna-Worrell duo at centre back, and also the Garner-Yates duo in central midfield?
Yeah, I think Garner and Yates is the one that will be criticised the most. I don't think James Garner's played too well since he returned from Manchester United. Ryan Yates has struggled as well. I think last night it was clear that when Forest looked to build from the back and get on the ball, Yates is the one who drops in and tries to create from a deep line role, and Garner pushed forward, but that didn't really work at all. Yates hasn't got the passing range that Garner has. I think Brian Hayder, when he returns from his isolation period, I think he's one to watch. I think alongside Garner, he could be one that progresses the ball forward and plays in that deep line role potentially and drive forward. Warren and McKenna, I think that's an absolute, again, banker for them two to start. I think it'll be interesting to see if Steve Cooper does come in, a manager who tends to play a 3 at the back system. I think that McKenna as that left-sided centre back in the back 3 could be a really exciting prospect. I think that he's very good on the ball, provides obviously natural balance at the back. Worrell's right-sided, McKenna's left-sided, and I think McKenna last night showed that when no one else could be bothered to run, he's good at charging forward and picking passes down the channel to Max Lowe. He's got a good relationship with him from Aberdeen. So, them two on their day for me. I mean, and I know it's a bit dodgy saying it now, but them two on the day for me are probably one of the best centre-back partnerships in the division. They kept the 5th best defensive record in the Championship last season behind Norwich and Watford, who went up automatically, and Swansea and Brentford, who are in the playoffs. So, Forest fans will be hoping that them two can get back to their best as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. For anyone still watching, please do send in your score predictions for the game on Saturday, Huddersfield against Nottingham Forest. We want to hear what you think the score will be. Right, let's touch on a few more Nottingham Forest segments. Huddersfield Town have kind of been renowned for this possession-style football that Corberan deploys, and it's been quite effective this season for obvious reasons. I mean, Harbey, how do you think Nottingham Forest combat this? Is it about Nottingham Forest pressing a little bit higher up the pitch more than they have done in previous games? I mean, how do you think they should combat and set up for this game on Saturday?
Yeah, potentially. I think I always like to see a high press, but it's also quite dangerous. I mean, when Brennan Johnson plays in the 10, him and Graben or him and Taylor, almost acts as 2 strikers out of possession, and that basically leaves a flat back 4. And I think Forest this season, some of the goals you conceded. I mean, last night it was one through ball, a very good through ball, but one through ball from Tavernier that split Forest in half right through the middle, and then Sporar went through on goal and scored. Against Bournemouth as well, Colback and Yates weren't cutting the passing lanes as they should have done, and it led to again a very simple ball through the middle, and it was David Brooks who scored that day. And I think Huddersfield, from what I've seen of him, are very good at playing through the thirds. Obviously, they've got players like O'Brien who are very good on the half turn. Dwayne Holmes, depending on what position he plays in as well. So it's all well and good high pressing, but I think that's what Reed will probably focus on this weekend. Out of possession work, and trying to stop Huddersfield doing what they do best, because they are very dangerous. You see, obviously Corberan takes a lot of inspiration from Leeds and Bielsa, and it's easy to see that when you watch his Huddersfield team play, how good Leeds are on the half turn and breaking forward. So they've got to watch out for that, and I won't be surprised to see a lot of threat from Huddersfield this weekend coming through the middle.
Yeah, let's touch on one more Nottingham Forest player in this segment. We've seen Max Lowe come in at Nottingham Forest at left back, and he's impressed in these early few games that he's played. Likes to get forward and drive forward with the ball and try and create opportunities in the final third. I mean, George, just how influential could he be on Saturday for Forest? Is he a player that you feel could make a real impact for the Reds on the weekend?
Yeah, he's been the bright spark in the last 2 games of what's otherwise been a bleak period for Forest. Impressed since coming on loan from Sheffield United. Obviously, fantastic assist against Cardiff at the weekend, where he made one. The first real time I got to see him get on the ball. Quick 1-2 with Brennan, and a pull back for Corben to finish. A real good pull back. He only took one look, and the weight of the pass was perfect. Last night it was okay as well. You can see his willingness to get forward. That's what I'm trying to say. He wants to bomb forward all the time, which always doesn't work out because it leaves them a bit exposed at the back. But he's got a good set of legs on him. He likes to get forward, and it'd be interesting to see how that happens, or how that fares against Huddersfield's system of wing backs. Because if he gets forward too much, the likes of Thomas and whoever plays on that right hand side can cause him damage. So, but no, a good player. And again, I think he's one of them players, as we alluded to before, if they do switch to a free at the back system, if Cooper comes in or anyone else comes in for that instance, it could be a good fit at that left wing back role.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a flurry of comments come in of your score predictions. So let's have a little look at them now. Okay, we had Jason Truman on Facebook. He is predicting a 3-0 win for Huddersfield Town. That'll be some result for the Terriers. Alfie, what do you make of that?
Yeah, bit bold, still high off the win at Blackpool, I think.
Yeah, very, very bold prediction, but you never know. We've got a few more coming in as well. Lee's Logan predicting a 2-1 home win for Huddersfield Town. Lots of Terriers home wins, it looks like, judging by these comments. We've got another one here, Dan Melk, 1981. 3-0 Huddersfield as well. We've got 2 3-0 Terriers predictions. Some very bold predictions there from the Terriers, but once again, you do never know. Jack Halsey, 1-0 to Huddersfield, we're predicting. We've also had a few more comments from Analytics Forest. Would like to see us set traps for Huddersfield, make them shuffle the ball to Pearson or Lees. George, what do you make of that sentiment?
Yeah, cheers, Chris. Analytics Forest there. Yeah, I mean, Corberan obviously prides himself on playing the ball out from the back, with his team playing out the ball out the back. Sorry. So, I mean, I'm sure Chris has seen a lot more of, and Alfie as well, seen a lot more of Pearson, Lees, and obviously Colwell. He says also underneath that they want to keep it away from the future England star Levi Colwell. So I've heard a lot of big things about him, this Colwell guy. So I expect an absolute blind from this weekend. But it's all going to come down to how Forest work out off the ball, isn't it, really? I think you expect Huddersfield on the home turf, full of confidence, to have plenty of the ball. Forest aren't the greatest on the ball anyway. So they're going to have to, as negative as it sounds, just hold their own for a bit and just try and hit on the counter if they try and can do it. It seems like anyway. So.
Yeah, right. Let's touch on some of the key battles in Saturday's game. So, opening this up to both of you, this question. I mean, are there any key battles in particular you feel could dictate this game on Saturday? I mean, I look at that midfield battle between Lewis O'Brien, Jonathan Hogg, James Garner and Ryan Yates. I think that could dictate quite a lot. Alfie, will come to you first. I mean, are there any particular players and matchups you feel could really dictate this game on Saturday?
Yeah, I think just sort of expanding what you said there, Sam, I think that the 2 that I'd identified were Garner and O'Brien. I think 2 really good young central midfielders, but 2 very different central midfielders at the same time. I know that Harbs is a big fan of Garner, and to hear him criticising him earlier was absolutely shocking, really. I can't believe he's done that. But Garner's really good on the ball. He likes to play. Forest were at their best towards the back end of last season when James Garner was influencing games. Lewis O'Brien's a little bit different. He's really tenacious. He gets around the park. He puts doubt in the opposition's mind. He forces mistakes and that kind of thing. And I think that the battle between those two will be really, really good to watch. And then another one, as we sort of touched on with Max Lowe. I've been impressed with what I've seen from Lowe in the limited time I've seen him for Forest since he's gone in there, and he's obviously probably going to be coming up against Sorba Thomas, who'll be playing right wing back for Huddersfield. And I think that what Lowe maybe needs to do is try and push Thomas back as far as he can. Really, I think that if he lets Thomas get on the front foot, then he's going to cause problems if he gets one-on-one with him, particularly if Sinani plays ahead of him with the sort of him drifting in field and creating that little bit of space out wide. I think Thomas could really punish Lowe. But if Lowe looks to get on the front foot against him, then he can sort of try and isolate Thomas's maybe defensive vulnerability, given that he's not a natural wing back.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any matchups, George, that you think could play a big part in this game? Obviously, we touched on the fullbacks. The likes of Harry Toffolo and Sorba Thomas do like to be adventurous on them flanks, and Max Lowe does as well. I mean, are there any matchups you feel that could play a big part here?
No, I agree with Alfie first and foremost. I think the wing back. Sorba Thomas has been a real key player for Huddersfield in the early parts of this season. So, Max Lowe will have to be on his game offensively and defensively as well. Just thinking about the way Forest will set up, I do think they'll probably stick with Corben and Taylor because, Forest played against a back three against Cardiff the other day, and I think Hughton had to basically play two strikers there. I think his thinking was that if you just play one striker, then you're completely isolated. So I think Corben, you'll see, if that is the case, you'll see Corben drop a lot deeper and try and get involved, and that also in a way frees up space for Johnson, who likes to kind of stay forward. So Toffolo will have to be on his best game there. Johnson, as I said, likes to stay forward and really like tracking back, and he's good at finding half spaces because that's the beauty of him able to play as a 10 or a right winger as well. But apart from that, I think it's all about what Huddersfield can do, really. I know that's a bit of a negative mindset, but they're at home and they're facing the better team out of the two at the minute. So no, I completely agree. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do in the flesh.
Yeah, Alfie, will come to you. I mean, do you expect Danny Ward to feature for Huddersfield in that central role on Saturday?
Well, when you think back to the game against Reading before the international break, I think that's maybe the most complete performance Huddersfield have put together at this moment in time, and Ward featured and obviously scored in that game. I mean, Ward gets quite a lot of criticism from the Huddersfield supporters, and in my opinion, I think that from what I've seen of Huddersfield over the last two seasons, they've been at the best when Fraser Campbell's played up front, and I feel like he brings the best out of Josh Koroma. Campbell was obviously rested at Blackpool midweek, which might be a little indication that he could come back into the side this weekend. He likes a goal against Forest, and yeah, it'll be a toss up between Ward and Campbell, but I'd maybe be leaning slightly towards Campbell, even though Ward has had his moments, let's say, this season.
Absolutely. Right. Please do send in your score predictions before we wrap up the show. We're going to get George's and Alfie's score prediction for Saturday's clash next. So, as I said at the start of the show, both George and Alfie will be there representing footballleague.co.uk on Saturday. George from the Forest perspective and Alfie from the Huddersfield perspective. Right, let's get your score predictions then, lads. George, we'll come to you first. How are you feeling about this from a Forest perspective? Are you confident, and what is your score prediction?
I'm not confident. I don't think any, even the most positive Forest fan probably couldn't predict a win at the moment. I think the best they can hope for is putting a valiant display, creating a few chances to be a first, and we would be a first. So I just think Huddersfield are flying at the moment. At home they've beaten Reading. Sorry, Sam, 4-0. Obviously they've got goals in them away from home at Blackpool as well. So I just think that at the minute Huddersfield will be full of confidence, and I just can't see Forest be able to contend with their energy and their work on the ball. So I'm normally one to sit on the fence, but I'm not going to sit on the fence this week, otherwise I'll get absolutely caned by Alfie. So I'm going to go with a 1-0. Actually, no, I'll go with a 2-0 Huddersfield. and I'm not going to say who's going to score because I'm not that detailed. But let's say Corben will score one of them.
There we go. Alfie, let's get your score prediction and how are you feeling about this from a Huddersfield Town perspective? Should they feel confident going into this one?
Yeah, I think they should definitely feel confident. It's hard to know what we're going to get from Forest with Hughton going. I know that I've seen a few Huddersfield fans, tweeting at this moment in time saying, I wish Hughton was still in charge and that kind of thing. I think they fancied the chance if he was still there. But obviously a manager leaving it just, means Forest are a little bit more unpredictable than they might have been if Hughton was still there. But, Huddersfield are in a good place at the minute and 4 wins from 5 is a really, really encouraging run of form. And given Forest struggles, then they're going to be confident of getting a win. I feel like the squad, everyone knows what's being asked of them. They're playing a 3-5-2 system, 3-4-3 system that's working. Everybody knows the role within that. We're not going to see too many changes in personnel. As we touched on earlier, it'll be Ward or Campbell. Both of them know the role in the team and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I just feel like Huddersfield are in a good place at the minute and Forest aren't. And despite the fact that Forest are going to be unpredictable and we don't know what we're going to get, I'm going for a narrow home win. I'm going 2-1.
2-1. Well, there we go. George and Alfie both predicting Huddersfield Town wins on Saturday, and judging by comments as well, most other people do think it will be a Huddersfield Town win on the weekend. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Under the Microscope show. George, Alfie, thanks very much for joining me on this show. We've got the EFL London show just a little bit later on today, so please do tune in to that. George Douglas hosting that one. So please do subscribe to us on YouTube, FLW TV. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. But once again, thank you very much for watching and we'll see you soon.